Merci de me recevoir. Je suis ravi d'être à Paris parce que j'ai passé une toute petite partie de ma jeunesse à Paris il y a 30 ans quand j'étais jeune. Mais je toujours mélange le français et le mandarin, so je suis obligé de parler l'anglais. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Le Monde. Thank you, everybody. I just today wanted to share a few thoughts on, yes, what Chinese want. And I have to warn you beforehand, I am in advertising. Actually, now I'm not allowed to say advertising anymore. I have to say I engineer media-neutral, idea-centric participation platforms. But advertising people also believe in insight. In Chinese, it's 消费者洞察, understanding the basic fundamental motivations of behavior and preference that explain why some people like some brands and why some people like other brands, as well as many other things. So part of the problem with insight is that it's a sweeping generalization. But in order to make an omelet, you have to crack an egg. So the first part of this presentation is going to be very broad, and I beg your indulgence. I'm going to try to outline in 4 slides what the Chinese worldview is, translate that into 3 timeless Chinese strengths, a few timeless Chinese weaknesses, then into the master insight. I have been in China for 18 years, actually 4 years from 94 to 98. I lived in Hong Kong. And if you've been in China, you know that 中国人有一句话, 2 countries, 1 system. Oops. 1 country, 2 systems. 一国两制, 50年不变. And then I moved to Shanghai in 1998. And I have to admit, in American I say typique. J'ai voté pour Reagan. Mais je ne suis pas Republican maintenant. But I really did believe that as countries evolve economically, they become much like us, Western. But I do not believe that's true. I think that China is becoming modern, China is becoming international, but the Chinese worldview, the Chinese cultural blueprint remains eternal. It evolves, but it does not fundamentally change. Chinese have different dreams than the West does. If you take a look at who we iconize in the West, of course Steve Jobs is popular anywhere because people love his products anywhere. And Steve Jobs as an icon of individualism is popular everywhere. But in America, in the West, he is revered because he has the courage to challenge convention. When I talk about individualism, I have a very specific definition. It's the encouragement of society to define yourself independent of society, despite the fact that we all live in society. So people that are rule breakers, who have the courage to drop out of Harvard because they have an idea, and then to win big, are revered. In China, individualism still does not exist in this sense, but I have to be very careful. Egos and the desire to express oneself is huge in China. The desire to obtain societal acknowledgement for contribution to society is also big. This is Jack Ma. Jack Ma, in case you don't know, is the inventor or the founder of Alibaba.com, China's largest B2B portal. And he became an icon because on a global stage, he reinterpreted a Chinese paradigm. Alibaba is a new technology success. It's 21st century, but it's rooted in Chinese way of doing business. 1, scale, and 2, broad ability to get a low price. So what we admire in terms of icons is different. I'm going to start off by playing a De Beers commercial, Diamond commercial, just to warm up a little bit. This is a typically American commercial. Marriage in China versus marriage in the West is a little bit different. In America, it's when we say a diamond is forever, the idea is love, romantic love, passion lasts forever. Take a look at this, and then we'll come back a little bit later to some De Beers work from China. You'll see that it's similar, but not the same.
Happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
Yeah, there's something I gotta do.
Oh yeah? What?
Okay. Well, I love this woman! I love her! I love
What
her!
are you doing? Stop!
Okay, then I guess this will have to do.
I love this man. I love him. I love
Two
him.
individuals united for eternity through the beating heart of romantic passion. That's the ideal Western marriage.
Discover thousands of ways to declare
And then
your
a
love
commercial transaction
at a
to
dime
close the
is free.
deal. Now, we in the West don't exactly know what to make about China. We swing from starry-eyed wonder and to end of days doom. Is China going to be rising forever? Will it become the world's only superpower? Or will it collapse under the weight of its own inherent contradictions? Well, I think that the answer is somewhere in between. The world is filled with grays. But in order to navigate our way through these grays, let's first take a look at what this Chinese worldview actually is. And when I say Chinese worldview, I have to say that I define that as the relationship between individual, society, and in fact, the cosmos. And it's different from the Western worldview. I think if there's one truth, 中文是真相. In Chinese, it's 真相. Is there the only absolute good in China is stability. It's called many, many different things. It's called harmony, it's called order, but ultimately it's a stable platform, because without stability, progress is impossible. The only absolute evil is chaos, because when there's chaos, all hell breaks loose and progress becomes impossible. Chinese want to move forward, but in order to move forward, they need to make sure that the ground is safe. In order to shift from the back foot to the front foot, there needs to be stability. So everything in China is understood in the context of stability. In fact, if you take a look at any of Chinese, and I am not a historian, I am not a philosopher, so please indulge my pseudo-intellectualism here. But if you take a look at any of Chinese indigenous philosophical thinking, Taoism, Buddhism, Moism, Confucianism, they all reinforce on different levels the primacy of stability. This is Taoism. Taoism, of course, is the cosmological order of the universe. There are 4 elements that are masculine, 4 elements that are feminine. They are called the Ba Gua, and they can only be combined in a total of 64 different combinations. And everything moves in a cycle, shifting back and forth, up and down. Political systems rise and fall according to the alignment of heaven and earth. The key point is that the cosmos, the universe, has an exquisite, interconnected order. And an individual can only move forward if he achieves harmony with that order. That's why water is a Taoist symbol, because it flows forward only by assuming the shape of that which surrounds it. So Taoism is about cosmological order. Confucianism is the cultural blueprint of China even today. Although many young Chinese people after the Cultural Revolution are unable to articulate what Confucianism is, it still defines the social interactions across all elements and all levels of society. Confucianism, can anybody give me their definition of Confucianism? Anybody? Any? No? Freddie? Freddie is our China CEO, oops, not our China CEO, that would be a threat to me. It is a, what is Confucianism?
Confucius, you mean?
Yeah.
It's the theories of Confucius about harmony.
It's about harmony, okay, but vous êtes très impressionnant. Excusez-moi, très impressionnant. C'est effrayant. But Confucianism is a social model, all right? Confucius articulated something called the Wulun, the 5 key relationships that make up all ordered society, between father to son, husband to wife, older brother to younger brother, friend to friend, and ruler to rule. And without whipping up a mathematical lather, suffice it to say that the individual in Chinese society does not exist independent of his responsibilities and obligations to other people. The individual in China is not the basic productive unit of society. That is the clan, jiazu. So the individual does not exist independent of what other people acknowledge as his contribution to society. So that means that today, tomorrow, and in the past, overt rebellion, challenging convention in a way that crosses the red line of overt rebellion, is something that is forbidden, even today with new generation, post-90s self-expression. So this worldview where the individual is not the center of society, not the basic productive unit of society, yields formidable Chinese strengths. What are they? The first one, which we should never underestimate, is the ability to mobilize national resources to achieve fundamental strategic challenges. When the chips are down, China pulls itself together for key strategic undertakings. This here, of course, is the Red Army saving people from the floods of the Yellow River that burst every year like clockwork. Mobilization of resources. This is a cliche, but this is the picture that we always show our visiting clients to talk about the promise of China. This is Shanghai looking out from the Bund in 1990. In 2012, this is Shanghai. Shanghai was designed by Fiat. The Pudong Financial Center was a top-down command and control determination of what the financial industry would evolve. It was achieved in a step-by-step incremental way, and again, it was top-down command and control. And it's not just the central government that mobilizes resources. Chinese companies are fearsome when it comes to mobilization of scale. Regardless of whether you're talking about China Mobile, which now has 850 million mobile subscribers, or you're talking about Haier, which is moving across the world, and particularly in emerging markets, or Lenovo, which took over IBM's PC division, but its most impressive performance is in the lower tier markets, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the rural fringe markets, where it now boasts 5,000 retail establishments. So Lenovo is teaching all Chinese how to get online in every corner of the country. I mentioned Haier, the famous appliance manufacturer. It's not a particularly innovative company, but what it does know how to do is achieve a price-value equation, and that step by step, as it goes through the emerging markets, accomplishes and achieves significant market share, even in the lower tier segments of the American college refrigerator market. So that's the first key strength, is mobilization of scale. The second key strength, which is interrelated, is incremental progression. The Chinese abhor breakthrough. Anything that is breakthrough is inherently destabilizing, but they do move in a step-by-step fashion to a higher ground of success. 中文有一句话，一步一个脚印, one step, one footprint. So, if you take a look at the Chinese growth model, it has been underpinned by incremental urbanization. Urbanization, where every year 1% of the population is moved from low productivity farm jobs to higher productivity jobs in industry and in the services, thereby achieving a margin of error for some of the structural inconsistencies of China. And it is still moving step by step. By 2030, 70% of China will be urbanized, 1 percentage point every single year. There's another strength that I should mention, and that is the ability for Chinese people to understand the world around them and to apply foreign strengths in a Chinese context. regardless of whether it's Buddhism as an import in the Han and Tang dynasties, or whether it is the passion for MBA courses at the University. Chinese know how to take something from abroad and apply it in a Chinese context, and you just have to take a look at the IT industry right now, in the internet industry. Baidu is not a copy of Google. RunRun.com is not just a copy of Facebook. These are inspired by abroad, but put into a Chinese context for Chinese consumers. So those are a couple of Chinese strengths. Again, mobilization of resources on a national level, incremental progression, and the ability to absorb foreign influences and apply them in a Chinese context. But there are also Chinese limitations, and these Chinese limitations complement Western strengths. This is why I do not think that China and the West will ultimately be competitors in the deepest sense. Hubu, yin-yang, we tend to reinforce each other's strengths and weaknesses, and there is the possibility for a great partnership in the 21st century. But, on to weaknesses. Conformism that militates against innovation. China is fixated by frameworks, and the freedom to operate outside of the framework elicits anxiety. Everything is ritualized. Confucian society is about rules and obligation and regimentation. So, am I saying that Chinese people are not capable of creativity? Of course not. I think that Chinese people have a wonderful sense of conceptual abstraction and an incredible logical capability, so the ideas, when they are free to blossom, are truly brilliant. Some of Chinese artists are impressive. The films of Zheng Yimou, Jiangwen, Devil's at the Doorstep, one of my favorites, and we all know Ai Weiwei. These are true artists. But the structure in which these creative souls operate is not free. And anything that challenges convention is inherently a threat. In fact, I exist in advertising, which, yes, is on the fringes of legitimacy, because our currency is creative ideas. And although the new generation, now versus 15 years ago when I arrived in the mainland, is much more stylish, much more self-expressive, when it comes to the courage to express oneself in the context of a hierarchy, it's still restricted. There is still that basic unwillingness to challenge convention unless it is safe. Shanzai. Oh, by the way, Shanzai is fake, all right? And in case some of you don't read Chinese, Shan is mountain, Zai is bandit. And so what fake goods are the idea is people that come out of a cave, make a little profit, get a profit, and go back in. It's quick, it's clever, and it's effective, all right? So everywhere, China has evil versions of popular brands. In Kunming City, last year, 3 Apple stores were opened to a very high degree of sophistication, and the blogosphere applauded the ingenuity of the Chinese entrepreneurs. So innovation is incremental. So Shanzai exists everywhere. But the brandscape is not fertile areas for creative mold breaking. Nike's Just Do It spirit is iconic the world around because it touches on human values. Nike is iconic even in China. And unfortunately, despite our efforts over the past 15 years to cultivate brands, there is no Chinese Nike. You have these, all right? These are the logos from shoe companies in Fujian province, inspired by, and I use that term liberally, by Nike's swoosh. So as a result of this need to conform to society and top-down rule, China is not a civil society. Now, I have to, again, be very careful to define my terms. When I say civil, I do not mean, of course, civilized. China is a great and glorious civilization that, unlike any other civilization, has endured for 4,000, 5,000 years of unbroken history. What I do mean by civil is it does not have the institutions that have been established to impartially protect the economic and political interests of individuals. Everything is based on relationships, and everything exists in grays contingent on external circumstances which are themselves ever changing. But capitalistic institutions do not exist fully in China, regardless of whether we're talking about the wide availability of credit, about a relatively transparent capital market and stock market, or commercial courts. People do not feel like their economic interests are protected, and this accounts partially for a middle class that has a savings rate of over 35%, despite penny-pinched incomes. So eminent domain abuses exist on a massive scale. People cannot own their property. They lease it for 70 years, and nobody knows exactly when that's going to change. The rural workers cannot own their land either. And so there is pervasive insecurity that my economic interests are not protected. And I won't even begin to talk about the welfare net that exists in tatters despite progress made over the past couple of years. And I don't want to get too political here, but we have all just seen the Bo Xilai drama of his wife as well. People don't know exactly how power rises and falls, but because there is no checks and balances. And let me make a diverse point here. When Chinese talk about the word democracy, they mean something different than what we in France or England or America mean. We mean representative democracy, Rousseauian, Jeffersonian, born of the Enlightenment, of the people, by the people, for the people. When the Chinese talk about democracy, they don't mean that. To them, representative democracy is an abstract theoretical construction. What they mean is responsive government, self-correcting with checks and balances. So we always, and transparent. They want an efficient government, but ultimately they want to have faith in the wisdom of their mandarins in Beijing. So when we use the same words, the meanings behind them are different. This is just the train crash in Guangzhou last year, the high-speed train. Now, on one hand, it shows that the government is becoming more transparent, or Chinese society, I should say, is becoming more transparent, because in 24 hours, 24 million tweets were spread by the Chinese Twitter called Weibo, protesting a very apparent attempt of the government to cover up the tragedy. So China is opening up. The Chinese government does open the window for, say, 48 or 64 hours of protest, but then it defines the terms of the debates. And you just saw that with the Japanese protests as well. It will allow steam to vent, but then it closes the window. And as a result, Chinese have, in terms of their products, rampant safety concerns. The Chinese do not believe that the products they ingest have necessarily been approved by a reliable central authority. We remember 4 years ago, just after the Beijing Olympics, the melamine scandal, in which hundreds of thousands of babies ingested milk that was contaminated to the effect of 600,000 kidney stone cases. So people do not have confidence even in the food that they eat. So safety reassurance, as we'll discuss later, is fundamental. I'm not going to talk about the private service sector today. So, that as background, Chinese worldview, the individual is not the basic unit of society. It is rooted in stability as a primary good. 3 Chinese strengths, 3 Chinese weaknesses. Now let's talk about what Chinese want. The thesis of my book, which you can buy on Amazon.fr, and I can get 15% of it by now, is that ultimately in the heart of Chinese people there is a conflict. Comment est-ce qu'on dit conflict? Conflict. In the heart of Chinese people. And we believe in advertising that the best insights are born of conflict. Because if a brand can resolve a conflict, the role of the brand is greater. If the role of the brand is greater, prices can go up. If price can go up, profit margins go up. If profit margin goes up, the company thrives. If the company thrives in China, society is more stable. If society is more stable, then, well, China can thrive in the 21st century. So little did the Chinese know that the secret of 21st century success is advertising. But, je plaisante un tout petit peu, excusez-moi. But the conflict in the Chinese heart is between, you can call it different things, projection versus protection. Projection of status to announce one's place on a social hierarchy versus protection of individual interest. The buying behavior of projection is very different. Projection is not sensitive to price premiums. Projection is something that is now, that is me, that is dynamic. Protection, on the other hand, is deferred gratification. It accounts for the high savings rates. It is something that is invested in the future. It is not for me, but it is for my child. So you can call the ultimate conflict projection versus protection. Or you can call it, on one hand, wanting to be acknowledged by society without crossing the red line of overt rebellion. We call this standing out to fit in. Still, it's about 一举两得, killing two birds with one stone. On one hand, achieving acknowledgement for being different in a way that ultimately is recognized as being part of the structure. Or you can call it a tension between ambition. Pepsi's tagline, when it was asked for more several years ago, was not ask for more in Chinese, it was 渴望无限, aspire to infinity. The Chinese want to move forward. The Chinese want to grab the brass ring. The Chinese want to move up in society and transform their lives. Even in the mass market, they want to move forward and be recognized as being the best at something. Versus regimentation. Again, paying attention and abiding by eternal social constraints. So, projection and protection feel very different. This is what projection feels like. Projection is big and bold. Up in the air. In first class. Larger than life swings. In public. Dripping with luxury. Powerful women with glorious shining hair. Larger than life goals, individual goals, and national goals. China is great, so I am great. Striding through the corridors of power with confidence in every step, but ready to defeat the enemy. And big, big back seats of any car, and lots of horses and advertising. China has always used material display to project social status. Luxury brands, on the other hand, are new, and we can talk about that later if you wish. But China has always used luxury as a marker of social status, from the yellow that only the emperor could wear to the size of door knockers and bolts to represent what level of the nobility you exist on. In fact, this is a bad movie by Zheng Yimou, all right? But take a look at the color schemes here. Yellows, golds, that's Gong Li and Zheng Yimou. And this is, of course, the Millionaires' Fair that rolls into town every year across the primary cities of China. Same color schemes dripping with gold. Look at the common personal names. These are all projective. Now, in case you don't know, Chinese name their children differently. First, there's a family name, and then a given name is always created, crafted, as a projection of parents' aspirations for their children. Particularly for men, these names are always very projective. Open, morning sun, hero, shape, power, forward, success, courage, climb, thunder. Very projective names. Or even where you live is projective. The names of apartment buildings. Now in Hong Kong, a Chinese society, it's still the same thing. When I was 31 years old, when I was a child, I moved to Hong Kong, and I lived in a building called Tycoon Court. And I can guarantee you that at 31 years old, I was neither a tycoon, nor did I have access to a court. But take a look at these names in Shanghai and Beijing. Now there's Richgate, plain and simple, in Puxi, but you've got Peacock Dynasty, Heavenly Horse, and my very favorite, the gathering of all heroes under heaven. That is projective. Now protection, on the other hand, has a different feeling. Protection is much more safety concerned. Take a look at some snippets of projection. I hope. Palm reading to understand the future. Omens, amulets that are omnipresent in every taxi driver. King An, the definition of future happiness, safe and happiness and balance. Anti-UV protection, one of the leading skin benefits. Bad men everywhere. Religion as a defense against uncertainty. Anything in China that was built to last was built to protect. I don't know how many of you have been to Xi'an to see the terracotta warriors, but they were built to protect the first emperor of the Qing dynasty, the guy who unified China. He was, by Western standards, not a very nice guy. He burned the books. He buried many people alive. Millions of people perished as he built or rebuilt, depending on how you read it, the Great Wall. He made a lot of enemies. When you ask Chinese people, however, whether was he a great emperor or not, of course he was a great emperor because he forged order from chaos. Chinese have an expression, 团结就是力量, which means from unity comes strength. Still, he made enemies. And each one of these statues is carved individual, life-size, to protect this emperor after death on his bumpy journey to the afterworld. But it is protective. The Great Wall, obviously, is protective. 3,000 miles of fortification against nomadic Altaic-speaking invaders that over 4,000 years of Chinese history were a constant threat. The Forbidden City is called forbidden because nobody can go in there. And it is built like a vault with moats, with labyrinthine inner courts, tall walls, and by the way, it is aligned with heaven for an extra dose of protection. In contemporary China, things are built to protect. This is something that you only see in China. On the 10th floor of apartment buildings, you have bars on the outside to protect from Spider-Man gone bad, I don't know. And then you have inside any well-off apartment building with high-tech security equipment and security guards, inner gates to protect every front door from vandals that don't have a chance of getting into the building. But protection and protection, projection and protection need to be reconciled. Here is one advertisement, and I apologize for playing television commercials, but now we can't call them television commercials anymore. We must call them filmic expressions. But this is for John Hancock Insurance. And notice about this, that on one hand, this is depicting a dangerous world, but the family is still moving forward to a beautiful future. It's that combination that works well, I hope.
天安人寿保险。
Moving forward while protected. So now let's talk about the 3 golden rules of marketing very quickly. The first, and this is what I call the granddaddy of golden rules, is that in order to charge a price premium, you must dramatize or maximize public consumption. Let me be clear. In China, no foreign brand can ever compete directly with a local brand. You will never be able to have the economies of scale or wring cost from the equation in the way that local companies do. So in order to be successful, you need first to have high margins. High margins are inextricably linked to public consumption. And this can happen in unexpected ways. This is Pepsi's Get on the Can challenge, okay? The most successful internet promotion program in Chinese history. Very projective. And Pepsi, of course, has a 100% price premium versus its local competitor. But what do they do here? Long story short, in order to get their face emblazoned on a can of Pepsi, more than 100 million Chinese youth competed in an online competition with a total of 750 million clicks generated over a 2-month period. Just an example of projection and public as a motivator. So this is why many of the brands that are status brands have an easier time succeeding in China, regardless of whether they're talking about Dior, Chanel, BMW, Apple, of course, right now, because these brands are identity surrogates that are seen in public. The luxury segment, although it's slowing down this year due to economic uncertainty, it will continue to rise because luxury brands are not exquisitely crafted pieces of merchandise. No, luxury brands in China are tools of advancement. They are seen in public. They are tools of advancement on a hierarchy of success. They are markers. So Louis Vuitton has a natural, less gravitational pull back towards earth. On the other hand, Victoria's Secret is going to have a tough go of it because very few Chinese women are willing to pay a 250% price premium relative to cost of goods for an article of clothing that only he sees in the dark. It's not going to happen, all right? So, and by the way, I will say that the best Chinese luxury brands are, the luxury brands in China are the ones that enable you to stand out and fit in. That's why Mont Blanc pen is so powerful here, because it's understated. The mere act of putting a pen in the pocket is a power play due to the understatement of that 6-pointed star. Giorgio Armani has classic designs that are safe with flashes of detail. Cartier's elegant watch faces surrounded by a thin strip of gold. It hits the high C of inconspicuous, conspicuous consumption. But it's not just luxury brands that do well in China. Business models have to change in order to conform to the public consumption imperative. Starbucks coffee has performed the Houdini act of marketing success in China. How is it possible that by the end of 2014, there will be 1,500 Starbucks stores and a culture that does not like drinking coffee? They did it by conforming to the public display imperative. Because Howard Schultz talks about something called a third space, this private refuge in between home and office. In China, Starbucks is a gathering site of gangs of new generational professional aspirants. They have redesigned their stores. No more only plush seats. There are big, long tables where people can go in together as a group, pay $5 for a cup of coffee, take that coffee out with a badge. So it's the same thing for Haagen-Dazs. Haagen-Dazs, China is the only market in the world where there is virtually no in-home consumption. Nobody is going to pay $7 for a half pint of ice cream, take it home, watch it with a girlfriend in front of an illegal DVD. It's not going to happen. However, there are now 600 Haagen-Dazs ice cream parlors where a new generation cool young guy can impress his girlfriend with his chic and savvy. Pizza Hut too for the mass middle class. Again, Very few Chinese people have pizzas delivered to the home, but the Pizza Hut restaurants are gigantic, designed for entire families to come in and come together around round tables and round pizza. Mobile phones. It goes without saying that the leading mobile phones in China are all Western brands, and they all have price premiums relative to the local competitor of anywhere between 150 and 350%. Apple now is, of course, the rage. So the mobile phone is an identity calling card, but once you go into the home, you have problems. The average Chinese person, in order to fit out 100 square meters of a new bare apartment, spends only 15,000 US dollars. In the home, people are very price sensitive. That is why all appliance brands that are leading appliances are local. Brands like Little Swan, Xiaotian'e, Changhong Television, TCL Appliances, and of course Haier. Because inside the home, China is very price sensitive. Is it evolving? Of course it's evolving. Of course, as incomes rise, people become less sensitive to price inside the home. But it's doing so in a distinctly Chinese way. People will pay more for floorboards around the front door where people see you. They will pay for a Siemens refrigerator. Now, Siemens has a 20% market share of refrigerator because you can point at it and it's very clear that it's a Siemens. Handycam has a 50% market share in China because it is brandished in public. But its Bravia television set has a 3% market share because it is consumed in public. So one company, two fortunes. I've already talked about, appliances, but any manufacturer that wants to come into the kitchen had better either resign himself to a narrow market share, a niche market share, or very cheap prices. Now, in terms of this public projection of status, let me just show a few filmic expressions. The first is for Ford Focus. And you can see here that at the beginning it looks very individualistic, very self-expressive, even rebellious, but at the end there's something that is projected into public and acknowledged. And that's why, help me, voila. Individualism is a means to an end. Or take a look at this alcohol ad. Again, this guy seems very Western, very individualistic, very self-expressive, but at the end, he is projecting his status in public in a conventional way with a business success and a beautiful girlfriend looking on.
活，记得活得痛快。每个人都有梦想，我相信，只有把自己的梦想付诸行动，才真够有意思。我就是这样子，顺势 VSOP， 活得痛快。
Second golden rule, product is a means to an end. It's related to the first golden rule. In the West, we have internalized benefit. This just feels good. The leading shower gel in France is sold based on sensuous indulgence in the shower. In China, that doesn't work. It has to be an energizing day to start your day with a kick, an energizing experience to start your day with a kick. So product in a hierarchical society are always means to an end. They are always investments in the future, and they have to yield dividend. Because as we discussed before, life is not safe. The business battlefield, yes, it can be a minuet, but it is competitive and tough. So life is a battlefield. And let's get back to the definition of marriage. In the West, again, It's ideally speaking about romantic love. When we say a diamond lasts forever, we mean love, romantic love that lasts a lifetime. We have the same tagline in China, a diamond is forever, but when we say that, we don't mean romantic love that lasts forever, though of course everybody desires romantic love. We mean commitment that lasts a lifetime. A Chinese guy has to demonstrate and prove his love, and it's not a question of just two individuals coming together, it's two families coming together with that relationship solidified by love. Now take a look at this diamond ad here. Again, I have to translate it. The woman, she's in a resort, by the way, a very fancy place, and she looks up at the moon and she says, "The moon is so beautiful." Chinese women like round things. And the guy, he doesn't say, "Yes, it's beautiful." He says something different. "I will go grab it for you." And so he dives into the pool, and then he comes up slowly, slowly, not with something that is the moon, but something even better. 5 months of salary.
多美的月亮啊！
喜欢吗？我摘给你。为了你，一切都可能。钻石恒久。
By the way, that 为了你一切都可能 means for you, absolutely anything is possible. Show me the love. So, a related theme to externalized benefits is that for the middle class, things have to move you forward in life. I'm going to show you now an early ad for Passat, which set the model for all middle class sedans, and it's literally teaching you the rules of success in business. No sports cars in China that are big. But even for the, oh, here we are, early MBA schools, only in China. And by the way, parents don't just crowd around the school gates for the college entrance exam. They also crowd around school gates for the 6-year-old calligraphy competitions. This is, again, a very typical diamond ad for men. 一个山光点足以长久一个强者. The sparkle makes the man. And elegance for Chinese women is almost a tool, something that helps open doors with grace in a non-threatening way. But this isn't just for the middle class. Mass market wants to move forward too, particularly as their economic circumstances improve. This is a very typical laundry detergent ad for a lower tier detergent called Feng Chao, a Unilever detergent. Long story short, stain removal is very closely linked to the daughter's performance on stage and the mother being admired as the best mom. Tomorrow there's a performance. Are you going to buy new clothes? Mom, don't worry. Tomorrow you'll be a little swan. She really is a little swan. New clothes? No, it's new Feng Chao detergent. Brings clothes back to new. Smart mom. So the third golden rule is reassurance. The first and most fundamental role of brands is to reassure on both physical level and on societal levels. That's why every brand that gets ingested in the body or put on the head needs a stamp of reassurance from a central government authority. And by the way, this brand here, Safeguard, is Procter & Gamble's leading soap brand. It's had a 25% market share for 25 years. And what is its key proposition? Germ kill. Again, protection, reassurance, keeping kids safe when they take a bath. This is COFCO, China's largest food conglomerate. 4 years ago, during the melamine dairy crisis, nobody had heard about COFCO, even though it's gigantic. But then in 2 months, after spending $10 million on advertising only, with this very sexy claim here about complete chain management, it went from a 4% awareness to a 64% awareness, because reassurance is a fundamental driver. Haier is not just loved because its products are innovative, but 12 years ago they made a breakthrough with Reassurance. They had the first 24-hour service guarantee and revolutionized service standards in the market. But reassurance doesn't just take place on a physical level. It also takes place on a societal level, or a face level. Face in China is not just dignity. Face is the currency of forward advancement. Face is traded, bought, lost at business deals. Face is something that is like money. You spend it to get ahead, and when you lose face, you go backwards. And this explains the prevalence of something only in China. The VIP card, or the VVIP card, or the V-cubed card, or the triple platinum VIP card. So an average guy in China will have 1 or 2 credit cards. Usually one of those will be a debit card, but he will have a stack of VIP cards. And what does he do? He walks into any establishment, the corner restaurant, the corner newspaper stand, the corner gym, the corner massage parlor, both the good kind of massage parlors, which are very cheap, and the bad kind of massage parlors, which I've heard are very expensive. And he moves in and he says, "I'm a very important man. Can I have a discount now, please?" You know, so again, this is a way of reconciling the need to not lose face while asking for a discount. Service is dependent on face. Auto dealers need to treat visiting families like royalty, and the retail establishments really need to make sure that people are buying on display. And finally, after those 3 golden rules, I just want to say before closing a few words on the internet. There is no question that the digital revolution is very important. In fact, I could even call it fundamental, and it is changing China very much for the better, mostly for the good. But revolution is a strong word. Why is it changing things? Well, obviously, the new generation is self-expressive. The new generation wants people to understand how special they are, and yet they feel constrained in the outside world. There's a new world of lifestyle options, whether it be gaming, whether it be pornography, which, believe me, is not restricted in China. Anything that you want is available on the internet. And by the way, internet bars in China are huge. They're the size of football fields, and internet users are called netizens, Wangming, citizens of the planet internet. And people can release their passion. iCoke is hugely successful because it has linked itself with gaming as a passion of youth, self-expressive youth. And of course, the internet gives ambitious new generation youth a platform to shine, to express how different they are. Some of the most successful internet promotions have always been about platforms, whether it be Pringles world record, Pepsi, get on the can, Nokia's Who's Got the Best Dance Move, Colgate's Star Search. Stars are created on the internet because there is a repression amongst the youth. They want to let people acknowledge them, but they don't want to take risks in doing so. You can become famous very quickly. Fei Wang became a very powerful star in a matter of 3 years. But Chinese Supergirl, Li Yuchuan, facilitated by 400 SMS votes, became an overnight sensation in a couple of months. Here is just a couple of guys very typical. They're called the dorm room boys, and they now earn more money than anybody because they have translated an idea that they had on the internet to being enduring spokespeople for both Pepsi and Motorola because they had an idea. I hope. These guys represent the quintessence of Chinese cool, but we can talk about that later. Again, Star Search, who's got the best dance moves. Here's a brilliant internet promotion that is linked to self-expression, but done from a safe distance. The Fang Ke, which is a youth fashion brand. Its tagline is very simple, 我是Fang Ke, I am Fang Ke. It is a self-expression, but what they enabled everybody to do is to open his or her own e-commerce site by creating ads with themselves modeling Fangko clothing. Each ad was tagged, and anybody that purchased clothing, some of the revenue would go to the ordinary model. So this is e-commerce that hits the high C of self-expression and making money. It can also help online netizens connect to like-minded mavericks, regardless of whether you're a hard rock aficionado, a running maverick. Anything is acceptable on the internet when you are protected by pseudonyms, avatar, and anonymity. And also, e-commerce has balanced the power between shoppers and retailers, particularly in third or fourth tier cities when there is not the bricks and mortar infrastructure. So this is a revolution. It has narrowed the chasm between rulers and ruled. This is an ad between, this is a blog posting after the train disaster. And I just want to say quickly that many people think that China's internet is controlled. It is, but it is also a polling breakthrough because 100,000 government people are listening to what people are talking about and addressing issues before they erupt. But, as I said, revolution is a strong word. The Chinese internet exists in a Chinese universe. The rules that are obeyed on the internet are in fact Chinese, and that's why Google made such hash of it, because it simply did not understand what Chinese people were looking for on the internet. Free expression, ultimately, even online, is mission impossible, hence the need for avatars. And anytime the government threatens to have real name listings, things drop quickly. So, just to recap, I perhaps broadly stated that the Chinese worldview and the Western worldview is fundamentally different. The individual in China is not the basic unit of society. The Chinese worldview reveres stability as the antecedent of progress. As a result, China has timeless strengths that will help it endure into new 21st century realities, national mobilization of resources, application of foreign strengths in a Chinese context, and incremental progression to a higher ground. But they also have limitations, which will mean that China will never fundamentally compete with Western powers, conformism that militates against innovation, and the lack of a civil society which doesn't protect economic interests. And we talked about 3 golden rules for marketers to heed to in China: the primacy of public consumption as an antecedent to high margin, the fact that benefits in China are not internalized, they are externalized investments in future that need to pay a dividend, and finally, the importance of reassurance on both physical level, social level, and psychological level that brands need to provide before becoming viable in the Middle Kingdom. That's what we have. Thank you very much.